Welcome to Unsilent with your hosts Dave and Brian. This is not another current events podcast. We're digging deeper, diagnosing, and discussing what's really going on today, how we got here, and providing observations for future generations.
Welcome to Unsilent. We're Brian and Dave, and we'd love to know where you think we got it right and where you think we got it completely wrong. You can do that by visiting unsilentpodcast.com. Go to the Rumble channel, which got some good comment sections, or various other social media places where people go to engage with one another. Well, Brian, dark day as we record this. Very dark day.
Yeah. So we're recording this on Wednesday, September 10th. And just a few hours ago, Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And I'm using that word assassinated intentionally.
Yeah.
There's no question that's what it was.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time talking about what could be the thing.
The tipping point.
And I actually saw on Twitter or X earlier today, somebody who's not they don't appear to be a particularly political person, but well known. And they just put, this was the shot heard around the world.
Yeah.
And I thought, who knows, right? We never know.
We don't know.
None of us have a crystal ball. But there's just so many layers to this. And I can't say I was like a Charlie Kirk follower. I certainly saw him around, and was very familiar with who he is and things like that. But I didn't follow all. I wasn't a close follower. Let's put it that way. But you got a husband and a father basically who makes his living, going to campuses, talking to young people, who have kind of been left in the are just kind of afterthoughts, or were up until he became kind of a rising star, is my take on it. I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but kind of picking up folks' thoughts that had kind of been left out of the conversation in large part, as the boomers and the silent generation were kind of running the show. They were kind of, the kids in college weren't really thought of much, as far as we don't really care what they have to think a whole lot. Unless you're like the super progressive loud left, like they were very well respected and thought of, I guess.
Oh yeah.
So you got the husband and father thing, and you got the guy who's going out to campuses talking to people who had kind of been left behind, which is a mantra we hear a lot, but I don't think people are sincere about it. I think he was sincere about it. But for me, the biggest thing is he's like the poster child of a guy who would go and give a microphone to people who absolutely disagreed with him and have a rational conversation. Now, he didn't bend. He didn't agree with them. He would try to persuade them. He would try to give his point of view, but it was always civil. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. He always was. I didn't watch, him all the time. But I enjoyed watching his interaction with folks. I mean, in some ways, the other person that he reminds me of, a little bit older version, is Ben Shapiro, who, would do something in some ways similar, but Charlie Kirk was more, sit down. He famously did these things, and he was assassinated. And that is the right word. There's no doubt it's political assassination. He was assassinated sitting in a chair with a microphone in front of him, talking to college kids, and he would give them a hearing. He was very sharp, very incisive. 31 years old. He basically just out of childhood into adulthood, several years ago. So, and you're right. I found him to be usually pretty respectful. He was not a shrinking flower. So he was certainly very, direct in his answers, and very incisive in his answers. That is
opinionated. Like, I don't mean to say that he was like soft about he had very strong opinions.
Yeah.
But I think that the thing that's jarring about this to me is, like you said, Ben Shapiro did a little bit of this. I'd say Ben Shapiro still is kind of more the lecture to, not hear them so much. That's not a criticism. That's just his style.
Right.
That's his modality in which he presents his ideas.
Yeah.
Where Charlie Kirk was like, said over and over and over again, people were like, why do you do this? He's like, well, if we stop having conversations with each other and we stop seeing each other as human, that's where the only thing left is violence. Like,
Right.
so that's the purpose of this, is to preempt or stop the violence, and
Right.
to have these conversations. And I think that the part of me that's angry and upset about this is that it's
Yeah.
that, as much as, like, here's a guy who's a dad of two little, like, toddlers. I think they're
Yeah.
very young.
Yeah. They're very
He's
young.
only 31. They got to be pretty young, right?
Yeah.
But it's like the assassination of the guy who was the poster child for having discourse, not yelling at or spewing at each other, but
Right.
talking to each other.
Right.
And I think that's the part that's, like, saddening for me anyway.
Yeah, and it does feel like we've talked about a number of times on our podcast that we don't know what the thing is that's going to be a tipping point, but when that happened, several different things came to mind. One of them was the word martyrdom. I mean, I don't know exactly how to fully unpack that yet, but because you don't want to, you cross the line. I've seen some of the responses of people that I've not seen speak this way on social media have been, well, they're shooting at us, it's time we shoot back. Now it's hours. It's just hours into this. And, the first natural response is, this is unfair. Why is it, it's the natural outcome of progressive policies and progressive, capture of our society. And, so but then, let's let it cool down, and hopefully it doesn't become, that. But, who would have predicted that the First World War would have started by killing a young archduke in the Balkans? I mean, that was
right.
Nobody would have predicted. Well, I mean, some people did predict it would be something in the Balkans that would set off a world war, but it seems to me that there are a number of candidates, and this is one of them, for a serious tipping point. I mean, you've had President Trump come out. He was the one that sort of broke the news of his death. He wasn't the one that broke the news of him being shot, but he's the one that came out on his Truth Social and said, Charlie Kirk, and everything he said was very appropriate. What he said, very respectful. He's got the flags flying at half mast for Charlie Kirk. The thing that one of the things, there's lots of things that will be, instructive to see, is Charlie Kirk, somebody that the left loves to hate. They love to hate on him, especially because he is going after a core constituency of progressivism, college campuses. Are how now, and today, of course, it's kumbaya, the left and the right, Kamala Harris, and everybody's saying we shouldn't have political violence and all that. Now, the question is, how long is that going to last? And is it possible that 3 days from now, he brought it on himself? I mean,
well, no, actually, Dave, that would take about 30 minutes.
Oh, was that? Oh, really? Okay, I didn't see that.
I have a clip. I think it might be CNN or MSNBC. I saved a number of things that I'll see if I can find it quickly. If I can't, then we'll move along here. But
see, I wouldn't have expected that with his assassination, because he looks like your all-American average kid. I mean, just his presentation for the most part.
Yeah, maybe I didn't save it, but it was on one of the usual suspects, CNN or MSNBC, where a guy was on and basically said, well, when you say hateful things, those turn into hateful actions, and it's just a matter of time until something like this happens.
Oh, wow.
So he kind of had a 3-point argument, and it literally, I don't even think he'd been pronounced dead yet. I think it was just after he'd been outshot.
Wow.
So your 3 days is,
I guess I'm overly optimistic.
You're overly optimistic. Yeah. The other things the news said that I thought worthy of saving. He was this gal goes on. This MSNBC goes on to say he's a divisive figure, polarizing a lightning rod, whatever term you want to use. And then later on that, or earlier on that same report, instead of even taking a beat to acknowledge like this, again, a human being, husband, father, but also somebody that did have a cohort of people in this country who did admire and respected. Now, whether or not you agree with him politically,
right?
He had the hearts and minds of some young people in a way that I don't think you and I can quite understand.
Sure,
we're not in that. We're not in
that age range. Yeah.
But her concern was that Trump's going to use this as justification for something like he did in DC after Big Balls got attacked. Like that's her concern is,
wow,
well, what's Trump going to do with this and how he's going to turn. And so you get the media on the progressive media doing that whole thing where they got guy, well, basically saying, well, he basically brought it on himself. And well, now what's Trump going to do with it? And that, and he was a polarizing kind of guy. They don't seem say the same things about what's the guy's name? Ibram X Kendi or something like that.
Oh, Abraham X Kendi, yeah.
Yeah, Ibram X Kendi. That's what yeah. They don't have the same kind of way of describing that guy.
No.
Right.
No.
For example. So you got the media outlets doing that, the progressive media outlets doing that. And then at the same time, these celebrations happening on platforms like Blue Sky and Reddit and some of these other kind of places where that kind of thing can be known to run rampant. Just giddiness, which, and again, I was using Ibram X Kendi as an example. Let's say something happened to somebody like that.
Right.
I don't know. I don't think if I took like the 50 people I'm closest with in the world, zero of them would be like high-fiving about that, right?
No,
zero.
No.
Now, you can't prove a counterfactual, and we I don't like to do the role reversal thing because it's hard to you can't prove it. Who knows? But I know the people who share my values, and I know what they would like, what they would celebrate, what they would not, and they would not celebrate this if it was a similar figure in the other political party,
right?
It's first of all, the video is hard to watch. I had finished up a work call and I was just scrolling through and it was just boom. It was the enhanced version where they blew up on it. And
oh wow,
I wish they wouldn't do that. I don't enjoy seeing that kind of thing.
Yeah,
I'm the guy who can't watch Schindler's List though, because I can't watch parts of that. Like, there's just something that I don't enjoy. Watching. That's certainly one of them. But
humanity.
So moments after that, there's this giddiness going on, and God bless the bullet, and like all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then the news media doing their thing. Going back to our point about the especially young men at colleges who were just kind of not, if they were afterthoughts in some cases, perhaps, or if they were being portrayed as like they're the bad guys because of something that happened 400 years ago, and you look like that guy, so like you're the problem, and you like that whole cohort. I'm not saying it would be, I don't know, but I could see where this would be similar to the GIs who enlisted the day after Pearl Harbor.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
It has that kind of emotional connection to their being and what they believe in so strongly, because he does have, for people, if you're a 25-year-old dude who has traditional Judeo-Christian values, he's your guy.
Yeah.
He's the guy.
Yeah. And there's a lot of folks like that. And, they talk about, what's of value to your average conservative, your average working conservative kind of thing. Well, it's family and your career and all these kinds of things. And these other things annoy you that happen, but they don't really rise to the level of I'm going to do something about it until something happens, and you never know what that something is or when that something is that kind of quote unquote activates them and makes them like, what was, I can't remember which movie it was, but where it's an old movie where the guy leans out the window and he shouts at the top of his lungs, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. It's just working Joe, where you're just your average working Joe who has just been pushed beyond the place where he can take it anymore. And there's there's a lot fewer activists in the world than there are working Joes in the world, Joe Sixpack in the world. And so I don't want to see, left and right going at it outside in the street here. But there's lots of examples in history when those types of things end up happening. And the other thing that's interesting about that, or the other thing that's cautionary about that, is those things tend to happen when people are not anticipating them, when
right.
the side that is pushing whatever they're pushing, it doesn't think, well, they just think they can keep pushing forever. They can see it keep doing whatever forever. And, they've always laid down. They've always taken it. They've always just sucked it up and, okay, well, it's just another, whatever. I got to go to work and, buy my 6-pack of Rainier beer. But, a thing happens and there's, the powder keg ignites. And so
the bully doesn't know when he goes to steal the kid's dollar for lunch money, which he does every Thursday, that the kid had an argument with his dad or mom that morning as a powder keg walking into school, and the bully goes to take the dollar and the kid lights him up, and the bully's like, what the hell's going on here? Like, I agree with you 100%. It's just that the potential for parallels here is meaningful, I would say. Again, I'm not saying this is going to be the thing. I don't know if anybody would have said, like, 6 months ago, what are the top 100 things that could be the tipping point, and nobody would have said Charlie Kirk being assassinated. I don't think that would be it. But the emotion involved here, and one of the, for Kenny G, the guy we're talking to 70 years in the future, trying to explain what it's like to go live through this era. One of the memes that was really popular about a year or two after COVID was, I don't remember what the picture was, but the text was essentially, wait until the people who just want to be left alone get involved.
Yeah.
That was kind of the thought.
Right.
And this certainly seems to fit within that, especially when coupled with the Ukrainian girl who was killed on the subway.
Oh, yeah.
And all the nastiness that followed that. And honestly, like, coming into this week's recording, it was like that's something we kind of had to talk about because it's meaningful, but I really was not looking forward to talking about it because it's just revealed such an ugliness of humanity and the ugliness of elements of our culture, that are shameful and embarrassing to even acknowledge, right?
Yeah.
But you take this Charlie Kirk assassination, couple it with that thing, which hit the news. I think it happened like 2.5 weeks ago, but it hit the news like 3-4 days ago.
Right.
Man, you've got some momentum here building up for people who their wages are not keeping up with inflation. They're constantly being told that they're the reason for everybody else's problems, and like people like you are the reason why everything is wrong, and people like you need to pay reparations and suffer. And man, I tell you, people are only going to take so much of that crap.
Yeah, well, in the founders' philosophy, that they wrote, that people are predisposed. I'm not saying it exactly right. People are predisposed to suffer evil as long as evils are sufferable. But when is it that evils become not sufferable? So we've had the recent school shooting by the trans terrorist person. We've had just a variety of these things have happened. That so you look this way and something, you look this way and something, and you open up your news app and there's something new today, and it's like getting punched. It's like Rocky in which one was it? Well, it is Rocky in the one where he fought Dolph Lundgren.
Like,
he's like,
all of the Rockies, he's getting punched a lot, Dave.
Hit me. He just stands there, hit me. And they said, well, what's he doing? He's getting beat up. He says, no, he's getting mad. And the
other thing along those lines, people can suffer evil or tyranny until it's insufferable. I think one of the things that allows people to suffer is hope and belief there'll eventually be a way out.
Yeah.
And this is why I think the Charlie Kirk thing in particular, more than if it was a Ben Shapiro, more if it was a Fox News anchor, more than that, he lived his life demonstrating how it should be as far as having discussion to solve problems versus this. Okay, that may have been an element of the hope or belief of we're going to get through this, and now that is gone.
That's
and
taken
been
away.
kind of not only been taken away in a tactical sense, but taken away as in that's an ideal to aspire for.
Right.
And this is what happens to people who try to do that. Okay, well, again, you and I have talked about this many times. If you take away people's voices, there's only one alternative that I know of.
Yeah, that's exactly
and
right.
this is a pathway that it was a little tiny bit of it, little tiny spark of hope here in this guy from the perspective of these younger people.
Yeah.
That now has been tactically removed. Like, this guy's not here to do this anymore. But also, here's what happens to people who do that kind of thing. And man, again, I'm not saying it is going to be the thing. I'm just saying, holy crap, it could be.
Well, the other thing about the group that he appealed to, his constituency, were young people much younger than you or I, and those people, when revolutions and movements and activism and all that kind of stuff starts, it's usually not with the graybeards. It's usually with the 20-somethings. I mean, the graybeards ultimately get in and say, "Hey, let's organize this. We can make money," and all that stuff. But in terms of the people that take the action, the people that are impulsive and aggressive and are have the testosterone coursing through their veins and all that, it tends to be the young people, and that was his constituency. And so all it would take, and again, this is speculation, is what if somebody with his oration skills, his intellect, but not his moral compass, leapt up and tried to fill that void and filled it in a violent way. Yeah. I mean, so, what if somebody, emerged that said, we got to get revenge for Charlie Kirk, and, position themselves, because people are going to want to position themselves. There's going to be people who want to position themselves as his replacement, because he's got an audience. He's identified a movement, quote unquote. He's created or identified a movement. And who is it that's going to sort of fill that void? Because something's going to fill that void, and it could be something, hopefully it's somebody like him that has, and I didn't always agree with him and everything, but he was a general force for good and positive, positive philosophy. It could be somebody that doesn't share some of those constraints.
Yeah. I don't know that I don't agree with you on everything. I don't disagree with you on much, probably, but this notion that we have to agree with, I not criticizing you for saying that, of course. I think you have a genuine heart, and you come from a good place. I think that kind of talk, though, is going to be the casualty here. Is we find ourselves couching these things like, okay, well, yeah, I like Charlie Kirk. I don't agree with everything he said, but and we have to go into explain.
Sure,
I think that kind of preface is going to be a casualty of this. People like, I like him. I don't give a shit what you think. I like the guy.
Yeah.
And maybe what I liked about him was that he was driven to hold uncomfortable conversations and teach people how to do that.
Yeah.
And I didn't really agree with every position he ever took. My mom, who listens to our podcast, tells me she doesn't agree with every position I take. That's how the world works. It's okay.
Yeah, that's cool.
But we've had this kind of delicate dance we do around when we show support for someone like that. We have to, I think that kind of thing is going to be like, I wouldn't be surprised if that goes away pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And looking at college campuses specifically, now I never went to college, so I don't know what these things are like, right? I mean, I've been to a campus, but I've never attended a class.
Sure.
Imagine, Dave, what it would be like when inevitably TPUSA on some campus somewhere is going to want to have some kind of thing to celebrate his life.
Of course.
And then the protesters show up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And or the school handles that differently than they did similar kinds of things for Gaza or Palestine or Israel,
George Floyd,
whatever the thing was.
Yeah.
I mean, holy smoke. The potential for backlash here is, it just feels, because it's emotionally charged. This is not a pragmatic,
right?
It's not like Trump getting assassinated. Okay, president gets assassinated. I mean, you have a 10% chance of getting assassinated if you're president, like 90% chance.
Yeah,
it's just how things work, and not that we like it, but we can wrap our heads around it.
Right.
This is a guy who he was outspoken. He was not bashful about his opinions. but he was respectful and held conversations in a respectful way.
Yeah.
Not kowtowing to people, not saying, "Yeah, well, I think you're right about." No, he was very firm in his beliefs, and he stuck to facts. He was not a guy to take leaps on conjecture like I do, things like that. Pretty good morally, like I like the kind of the way you would want your child to
wholesome
conduct
guy.
themselves, no matter what their political leanings were. You would want them to behave in this way.
Yeah.
And when inevitably a school somewhere is going to screw this up, and that people are gonna say we want to have some kind of day of celebration or remembrance or something like that, and it's gonna be an absolute powder keg.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that could potentially make it better or worse, probably not better, maybe 5% better, 95% worse, is right now we don't know who did it. We don't know, in fact, as of at least last I heard, the suspect, whoever that is, I mean, they've got somebody that's a person of interest, I guess, or something like that.
The news conference I saw half an hour. I saw a little clip from the news conference about a half an hour before you guys started recording. They had a guy. They let him go. They arrested him for like disorderly conduct or something like that. He wasn't the guy, but he was the guy the videos were taken of. They have a different guy who they're saying more or less like he's our guy.
Oh, is that right?
Video of the guy up on the roof, a la Butler, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Same kind of like black outfits, laying down flat.
Oh, okay.
Roof, like they have that guy, not the guy that they first had the video arresting or whatever. So presumably they have a guy, who knows if it's the only guy, but they have a guy in custody that they're reasonably confident did it.
Well, and so, yeah, and I mean, it's probably inevitable that they would catch him. The thing that's interesting, or that will be instructive, I suppose, is what we find out about this person. Now, is this person sympathetic? Is that a sympathetic figure on the left? In other words, so you remember, what was the guy's name? The good-looking kid who killed the insurance executive, and
Luigi something Mangione.
Luigi Mangione. I think that's right. Yeah, good memory. So if and you remember the cult following that's developed around him, and the insurance companies have been screwing us, so it's about time we screw them, this kind of thing. Yeah. So if the person that assassinated Charlie Kirk is a sympathetic to the figure to the left, that could and develops a cult following, or all of this, or he starts getting to people defending him, this type of stuff. Well, Charlie Kirk said this, so you can't really blame him. If that kind of thing happens, that then has a great opportunity or a great risk, rather, of making the whole situation substantially worse, adding insult to injury, and making the whole thing, even more of a powder keg than it already is. And, it's not, I mean, before the Luigi Mangione thing, I would not have thought that you'd find any group of people other than complete lunatics that would support somebody that ran up and killed somebody cold blood on the street, no matter who they are. I didn't expect that. I wouldn't have thought that, and nor would I expect. So right now there's left and right, Democrats and Republicans, all with an outpouring of political violence is unacceptable and all this kind of stuff. But we know that might not last, and there might be the equivocations, and especially if the person is a sympathetic figure toward in the left. Well, my life was this and this and this and that because of people like Charlie Kirk, and well, I guess you can understand his rage. That is another level of danger here, I think, in terms of a tipping point kind of event.
Yeah. One thing I did say before the Charlie Kirk thing that it has a little bit of relevance here, it's not spot on, but they did a poll of men who voted for Trump versus women who voted for Harris, and they had them rank like their top 10 or 12 things that they cared about. Number one for men who voted for Trump, 34% thought important for personal definition of success was having children.
Right.
And that was dead last for females who voted for Harris, 6%. Financial independence, number two for men. So these are people who I would say, just based on this, like traditional Judeo-Christian values, have a family, take care of them,
Right.
And number three then is fulfilling job career. Number four, being married. Like that's all, like you have a family and you provide for them. That's that all like fits like lockstep, right? women, dead last was having children. Second to last was being married. Top for them, though, was fulfilling job career, 51%, higher than the men, 51% for women, having a fulfilling job career, 30% for men. So how I'm tying this kind of sort of to the Charlie Kirk thing is these are young men with traditional Judeo-Christian values, family first, take care of your family. Those voices have not been popular, I guess is a way to say it, for like the last decade. They've been kind of frowned upon as that's how your granddad thought. Get out of here, kid.
Right.
What's wrong with you, kind of a thing. But these are the kind of dudes that do the right thing when nobody's looking. People who want to have a family and take care of them. And again, going back to like evil is tolerable or evil is sufferable until it's insufferable.
Right.
These are the kind of guys who would sign up for the army after the day after Pearl Harbor.
Right. Right.
And I think that I'm not hoping this happens. I'm not speculating it will happen. I'm saying the conditions are ripe for this to happen.
Yeah.
These could be the sleeping dragon that has been awoken in this era.
And in that case, it's people that begin to internalize. It's one thing to look at a media figure, a national media figure like Charlie Kirk, and say, "Oh, wow, that's very sad that this media figure died." It's another thing to then internalize what happened to him, the assassination, and internalize that and say, "Well, this is what it means for me personally. This is not just an external sense of that's wrong. It's not just. It shouldn't happen." And political violence is unacceptable, and all the platitudes and all that kind of stuff. But it's another thing when it becomes, what does this mean for me and my family and my ability to 100%. Follow along the values that you're talking about that those folks have.
Yeah. So again, I agree with you 100%. It's not the man Charlie Kirk who was killed that is going to be the big thing. Although I there's sadness there for sure.
Yeah, horrible.
It's what he represented and the pathway they had to find some kind of life that they wanted to live.
Right.
That door has now been closed, at least some for now, temporarily, permanently, whatever. But it's the emotional reaction they will have to how this affects my life and the life I was hoping to build when I'm 24 years old or 22 years old.
Right.
That is the impetus, not the man getting shot with a bullet from 200 yards away.
Yeah. And hope in America. I mean, if hope in America dies, then what do you have left?
Right. And that's where things become insufferable, in my opinion, is when you lose hope. Right.
Exactly.
Now, going back to tying this to the young Ukrainian girl who was killed I think she was 23 years old, killed on the North Carolina subway.
Yeah.
Watching the discourse on that was enough to make you vomit. I mean, just watching the same crowd that was celebrate a dude getting murdered.
Yeah.
Blaming. It's interesting how they have to do some real mental gymnastics to find who to blame when this 6 foot whatever 200 and some pound dude like from behind stabs this young girl who, I don't know, she weighed 110 pounds maybe. I mean from behind, like, kills her, and then watching the people on the subway train like just sit there,
do nothing.
That was Dave, I'm gonna sound like the get off my lawn guy.
Yeah.
There's no way 25 years ago I would have lived in this country and believed that was a possibility in my lifetime. To see people sit there and do nothing. I mean, you can say the humanity's gone from us, which I agree with. I'm not dismissing that.
Yeah.
But man, there's more to it than just the humanity being gone. There's a lack of empathy and a lack of willingness to do anything to help anyone, even, and that is unrecognizable to me. And I think that the reason I'm harping on this is because for the context of Kenny G, who we're talking to, the guy, 3 generations from now or whatever, this is not even remotely close to the kind of country I grew up in as a young man, where you would. I grew up in parts of the country, Dave, where men would apologize for saying hell in front of a woman.
Sure. Yeah, I remember those days. Well,
so fast forwarding to this, where a woman literally gets killed in front of you, and people are literally just sitting on the subway train. They glance over and then they're back on their phone.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, the change.
Well, it seems to me that some of that is, I mean, so in the past there would have been a shared culture and a shared expectation where, you know, if you're sitting there, I'm sitting there, a few other people, we would all think, oh gosh, I mean, after we had the shock of it for a second or two, we'd all get up and start to try to do something about it. In this case, you know, the death of culture preceded the death of that young woman, and what I mean by that is that they're sitting there because maybe these are all well-meaning good folks, but maybe they don't believe that if they get up, they're going to get killed because nobody else is going to get up. There's no expectation. There's no cultural expectation that this atrocity is happening over here, and so therefore I'm going to do something about it. And there's especially a hesitancy. Now, I don't know that this happened, you know, all within the space of the several, you know, the minute or so it took for her to die. But, you know, there's also the, in recent cultural memory, somebody who did help, who got their life ruined on a subway train, Daniel Penny.
Yeah, Daniel Penny. Yeah.
You know, who actually prevented this kind of thing from happening. And he basically got his life ruined, you know, for a significant period of time for doing the right thing. So, you know, so the cultural framework had the death of the cultural framework, I think, preceded because their expectations of culture and the people around them was not sufficient that they were willing to take a risk.
Right.
So that's dangerous.
And again, going back to the media's response, again, the same crowd that was certain the guy who killed George Floyd, I don't remember the police officer's name.
Derek Chauvin.
Chauvin. The crowd on TV who was certain that guy killed George Floyd because he was black,
right,
had no belief at all that this dude killed her because she's white. As
white.
He's walking off the subway train saying, "I got that white girl."
Yeah.
This is the part of me that's just like, this is not sustainable. This is in large part why I do this podcast with you, because this is just not sustainable. You cannot live in a world where people have to work that hard to protect their position and defy all logic to do so. I just don't think that's going to make it. So anyhow, we've covered the domestic stuff. A couple of pretty big things happened globally that you know way more about than I do. So fill us in on if Charlie Kirk's Assassination doesn't do it, we got a couple other contenders. What are those?
Well, yeah. In fact, it was funny because I texted you earlier today. I said, well, 3 tipping points today, potentially. So the other 2 potential, and this is all within a 24, 48-hour period. So I guess I'll just go from north to south. How about that? There's no particular way to do this. But so a number of Russian drones had invaded essentially or crossed over into Polish airspace, were intercepted by NATO fighter jets and were shot down over Polish airspace. Now, you know, we got to keep in mind Poland's history. Poland has oftentimes been the transit point for wars over the years. And so they're kind of sensitive to this stuff, right? and now, of course, Russia said, no, it wasn't us. No, it wasn't us. It must have been Ukraine. Ukraine did it. We didn't do it. And so there was so you had the Polish folks get involved. You had I can't remember what his name is. The head of NATO got involved. The U.S. commander, the Supreme Allied commander there for U.S. in that. So there's a bunch of people that said this is a very serious thing. Now, you know what this reminds me of.
Well, hold on. My understanding, you know this way better than I do, but my understanding is that Russia these drones didn't go like a half a mile into Polish airspace. They went like hundreds of miles. Into Polish airspace.
It wasn't just accidentally crossed a GPS boundary line. This was
we were going after Ukraine and sorry, our GPS was off and we veered into your country half a mile and came right back into Ukraine. It wasn't that. It was hundreds of miles Like I heard 300 or 400 kilometers, so however many hundreds of miles that is. Is that accurate?
Yeah, as I understand, I don't remember exactly how far it was, but I don't know if I read how far it was. But it was a significant incursion.
Okay.
It wasn't just a small incursion. And what it reminds me of is there's the story of Hitler crossing the Rhine before World War II, the Rhine River. At the time that Hitler did that, the French army was the most formidable army in the world. They had a big army, and of course they folded like a moldy baguette when the war finally ended up starting. So it reminds me, and militaries do this. Militaries test their adversaries all the time. They fly into their exclusion zones. Between any two countries that are potentially hostile to each other, they've got an identification zone, then an exclusion zone. These are outside of your territory. It's like, because jets fly so fast, you don't want to say, well, you didn't fly over you were 5 inches away from my place, but we're not going to do anything because, a second later you could be dropping bombs on my major cities. So, it could very well be Russia testing the NATO defenses, see where NATO's at. Because, the way that Putin is thinking about this thing, so he went to Alaska with Trump and they were buddy-buddy together, and Trump flew some bombers and F-35s overhead and some variety of things, and they shook hands, and we're going to come to the table and we're going to negotiate. Nothing ever happened. And so Putin, and I understand something about Russian history because I've read a ton of it, but I can't say that I'm an expert on any of that. But it feels very much like, well, I'm even testing Trump, and Trump's not doing anything. So why not take Lithuania? Why not take Finland? Why not we'll take a little bit of land in Poland, because, by the way, there's some Russian speaking people there. Which is, of course, Hitler's excuse. There's some Russians, there's some German speaking people there. We need to liberate them. It's a righteous cause. So there's that. There's the potential of and this all on the heels of the summit between Xi and Narendra Modi and the Indian Prime Minister and Putin and Kim Jong-un, just a bunch of folks, and which, by the way, the most dangerous part of that is that Modi was there because, it'd be great if we had 1.4 billion Indians on our side, so ticking them off wasn't necessarily a great idea. But anyway, so there's,
I think this kind of dance that you're describing, where we do the countries test the, if I was the military leader, I'd want to know, well, what's the reaction time going to be if we had to go into Poland? Like, how fast would they respond?
Yeah.
These things you'd want to know. They're tactically probably good information.
Sure.
And in the nuclear era, where the final answer is final,
yes,
there's going to be some vetting and double checking and some grace given that wouldn't be given if you were still using, tanks and traditional bombs. Let's say
exactly.
There probably would have been a response militarily in that era, where now you kind of can't, because your hands are tied by the atom bomb kind of being the natural progression of how things are going to go. So it does change like the dynamic of how countries interact in this era we live in now that wouldn't have been the case 85 years ago.
It definitely does. And the speed at which all of this happens is critical in the age of hypersonic missiles. One of the things that China showed off, I think it was just last week, it's hard to keep up with these news cycles, but one of the things that China showed off is an array of hypersonic missiles. These things go fast. They cover a lot of land, or water, very, very quickly. And so, if your military isn't just Johnny on the spot when something happens, by the time you decide to respond, it might be too late. It could very well be too late. And Russia still does have, their inventory is old, but they still do have the world's largest stockpile.
500.
Of nuclear weapons. And so, it's not something to just say, peace shot, doesn't really matter. So there's that. There's that potential for another European war. But, I think Barack Obama is still there saying, you can't do that. It's not the 21st century.
Well, if I recall correctly, we don't have to worry about this because Joe Biden told somebody don't like 3 years ago.
Yeah, so that's right. Just don't. Just don't.
Yeah.
Now, it wasn't the fact that he couldn't remember. It wasn't the fact that he couldn't remember that he wanted to say don't what, but, just don't. Don't what?
I don't. I think he was talking to Putin, but I'm not positive when he said don't. And so we're clear, Dave.
We're
So
good. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to say that this whole segment you just did is utterly moot because
waste of time.
Joe Biden's word. Yeah.
Yeah, they're scared of Joe. Yeah, they're scared of Joe. I'm sure that's true. And so the other one, which has a lot of people up in arms, is Israel took out a number of, and we don't know exactly how many, but Israel took out a number of Hamas leaders and operatives in Doha, Qatar. And now the thing that is so striking about this is not that Israel took out Hamas leaders. They regularly do that. That's kind of part of the response to October 7th.
Yeah, that's just a Tuesday morning over in that part of the world.
That's right. There's Hamas leaders. Now there's dead Hamas leaders. There you go. Yeah. But the fact that they did it in Qatar now, and they also on foreign soil, which so it's not their. It's this is there's no way that the Israelis can rightfully claim that when they bomb Gaza, that's within their scope because it's basically their territory that they kind of gave to, and this people get into these long conversations about who owned it first and all this stuff, but you can't say that about Qatar. So they used precision munitions, and they and there was also a Qatari security person that was killed in that too. So a national of the Qatari people. The Qataris are a U.S. ally. We've got a base there. We've got a significant base there.
The biggest base in the Middle East is
in the Middle East. Exactly. Yeah. And so we've got resources there now. The responses to this have been very interesting. Of course, a lot of people in the Hamas and the left-leaning, Western world, which is essentially an offshoot of Hamas, college campuses, a lot of them too, are up in arms about this. The Qataris they made a significant show of being upset about it. It's illegal and all this. Now, they didn't say anything about, retaliation or we're going to destroy you or anything like that, because they know that, they start firing missiles at Israel and Doha and all their cities are leveled and they like their nice Western lifestyle that they live there. So as did the Hamas leadership. I mean, the thing that has been infuriating to so many on the Israeli side and those that have been, have blamed Hamas for all the evils that they have done, which is completely right, is that you've got, millionaires and billionaires that are basically leading Hamas from afar from, luxurious places in other countries and seemingly untouchable. So I've listened to some of the responses of The Economist and others. They're not The Economist is not a radical left leaning place, but it's certainly center left, and they're certainly, sounding the alarm about what that means, that Israel is attacking and believes they can attack with impunity. It's fascinating. Also, the Israelis told the White House that they were going to do this some time in advance, and we don't know how long. The Israelis went out of their way to say this was us and nobody else, which is, there's no doubt that when the White House got the call, they said, you better make clear we're not involved in this. It ain't us. We don't want to be drug into that. But the the White House also said, well, maybe this will be a catalyst to get some negotiations happening. So that there's coordination there that happened regardless of kind of the positioning.
One of the things, I don't know, we won't have time today, but one of the things that I'm gonna give you the preface and I'll ask the question. I listened to the 6-hour documentary, 6-hour podcast. Martyr Made is the name of the podcast. Daryl Miller, I think is his name.
Okay.
Pretty middle of the road kind of guy as far like he doesn't his politics are not a factor. He does a good job, I'd say, of portraying both sides of any argument he gets involved in, right? Mm-hmm. He did a 6-hour podcast, which I listened to as I was doing a lot of flying and I had lots of time on airplanes, about the Epstein thing.
Oh yeah.
And there's the kind of wink, nod, maybe Mossad and Israel's involved in that and whatever. And then you start looking around like, is it AIPAC? AIPAC, I think.
AIPAC, AIPAC.
American
Israel, yeah.
You start listening to like the influence they have in DC and things like that. And if you can answer this quickly, go ahead. If not, we'll park it for another
Sure.
episode. But it's starting to feel to me as a lay person who doesn't understand 99% of this stuff and how the world actually works and the geopolitical how things will happen behind closed doors. But it's starting to feel like Israel has a pretty significant influence over our foreign policy.
Oh, sure, sure. Well, yeah, I think that is worth a more in-depth discussion at some point, because there's no question about that. And I think one of the reasons is you can look at where are the concentration of Jews in the world. And yes, you've got, about 9 million or so in Israel proper, but you've got like 7 million in the US or something like that. And also, studies of Jewish culture and other cultures, Jewish folks are legitimately more successful on average than a lot of cultures are. I mean, and with money comes influence. So there's
what I heard you say, Dave, is Jews own Hollywood. Is that what you're saying? That's I got out of it.
So you've got Ben Shapiro. He's at the heart of all of it, right? So but don't say it too loud because they got the space lasers.
And by the way, if all my neighbors are Jewish, I would be that'd be a great neighborhood for me to live in.
100%.
I wouldn't have to worry about much going wrong, right? However, as we know, just because a culture is good and the people within it are good does not mean the government's good.
Oh, of course.
So I think it's important we got to make a distinction between the Israeli government and the Jewish population.
Sure.
But it is certainly like this thing with this strike happening in Qatar, which Qatar is a country I don't really understand. I on one hand, I hear how it's a great ally of ours. On the other hand, I hear how it's like the most barbaric of all the Middle Eastern states in some ways, as far as their Sharia or their
women, etc.
Islamic government. It's like it's the religion and the government are kind of synonymous. They're all it's all one thing, which doesn't really feel like a very likely U.S. ally, but they are a great U.S. ally.
Yeah.
But it's like the place in the Middle East you wouldn't want to go, but they're this. I don't understand a lot of that stuff. So for Israel to like put their thumb in the eye of that country, and now we are left kind of holding part of the bag, even though everybody said it's not us involved, but we all know that everything Israel does works kind of sort of.
Oh yeah, you bet. We got to greenlight it.
Yeah. So it really is starting to feel like an undue amount of direction or influence comes from the Israeli government in deciding the predicaments we find ourselves in and defending it. Maybe not they're not telling us which Al-Qaeda leader to take out, but they certainly seem to like get us in these jams that are not quite right. I don't know how to put it any other way because I don't know enough of the details, but we just shouldn't be in some of these spots that they put us in, it feels like.
Well, I think that whole situation is very complex from the standpoint. It's like your question about the Qataris. Well, on one hand, it's very understandable why they are our great friend, because they got a great piece of land, they're rich, and they don't hate us really very much. So, so they're alignment of values. The thing about foreign policy that I have these discussions with people all the time is like, well, but these people don't share our values. We're talking foreign policy. This is transactional and it is utilitarian. I mean, it's just that same. I probably told it on the podcast before. It's the same thing. Before in 1943, Stalin was our good buddy. In 1948, he was our dire enemy. Well, what changed? Circumstances changed. Did the values change? Did Stalin all of a sudden become a bad guy? No, but I've said many times over the years that the moment that we won World War II, Patton wanted to, keep going and, because these people are a threat and all this. Well, that's hypocritical. Well, you got to ditch things like hypocrisy when you're talking about foreign policy because it's utilitarian. And that's a lot of what we see with Israel.
And the evidence of that was seen with Manuel Noriega and
100%
or not Al-Qaeda, ISIS. We build these guys up, but then they piss us off, and some circumstances change. Now they're our mortal enemy, and now we're guns blazing towards them, and all that kind of stuff. I don't. Okay. Anyhow, so Israel does this thing to Qatar. They stick their thumb in their eye. to get the guys that they don't like who happen to be staying or living or whatever in Qatar.
Right.
And now tensions have escalated yet again in the Middle East when we were kind of patting ourselves on the back 3 months ago about how we averted World War III, and now we're kind of right back where we were.
Well, but see, here's what I think. Here's here's a hypothesis. I have no data to back this hypothesis other than the logic of the argument, and that is that the senior Hamas leadership was living pretty high on the hog in Qatar, right? They were doing okay. Mm-hmm. They had plenty to eat. They weren't living in tunnels in rat infested spider holes or anything like that. They were living pretty good. So, and they're the ones that were doing the negotiations. And they're like, well, we can drag this on for a while. I mean, we get 3 squares a day and we can, watch all of our TV and do whatever we want. And they bring us women all the time. So no big deal.
Right.
But what the Israelis did, which maybe it wasn't at our request, but maybe it was. I could see Trump saying something to the effect of, well, these guys need to come to the negotiating table. Well, they're not willing to, Mr. President. They're doing fine over there. Well, what can we do to get them to the negotiating table? Hey, Bibi, we'll look the other way if you blow the living smithereens out of these people. But by the way, I didn't ever make this call, click. And Netanyahu says, well, we're justified because of October 7th, which I think they are, on a moral basis. So they blow them up, and now all of Hamas knows that all of Hamas is in danger. So from a negotiating standpoint, that kind of was a little bit on the brilliant side from that perspective.
Which in the 7 to 10 days leading up to that, now that I think back, I hadn't really put this together until just a second, but Trump had been saying, you better get the hostages back because there's American hostages that Hamas has.
Yes.
And he had been saying kind of, you better do it or else. And then Israel pulls in or else. That just kind of sort of helps us on that front, but it really wasn't our doing or our idea, so to speak. We've got plausible deniability, which is key in all these things always.
Yeah.
All right. Now I'm trying.
I mean, it lines up all the way. It lines up every way. Trump's negotiation, the thing that Trump hates is when somebody doesn't negotiate with him the way he wants to negotiate. I imagine the Trump's big anger at Putin now is just that Putin's making him look bad. So, is it so much that people that, I don't want to be cynical about Trump.
It's like playing poker with Billy the Kid.
That's right.
You can only bluff so often when you make it look stupid in front of everybody else, and next thing you know, you're toast.
Yes.
Okay. I got you. All right.
Yep.
All right. Well, we covered a lot, and good Lord, Dave. I mean, just we kind of had a few weeks there where not much had happened, and now it feels like we're right back in the thick of it again.
Yeah. No, I know it's true.
It does not feel as optimistic or rosy as it did 40 hours ago. That's for sure.
And I suspect the fourth turning will keep going that way.
Yeah. As Dave mentioned in the beginning, if you think there's something we said that's especially on point or especially wrong, and you would like Kenny G to know your perspective, we'd love for you to share that with us. You can go to unsilentpodcast.com, or Rumble has a great comments section. Again, we're trying to explain to future generations what it's like to live through this moment as they undoubtedly look back and say, what the hell was wrong with those people?
Exactly.
So that's it for this week. Until next week, this is Dave and Brian signing off.
See you next week.
Do you want to be unsilent? Make your voice heard on our social media channels and share where you think we got it right or wrong. Go to unsilentpodcast.com for social links so you can join the discussion.